Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Infinite Podcast. I'm your host, and alongside me is the ever-curious Simon. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of VR. No, not just for gaming, but redefining art itself. Simon, VR has evolved insanely, right? From those chunky headsets to now hosting entire art galleries in virtual spaces. What do you think about this shift from traditional canvases to digital realms?
Man, I think it's wild. You can literally spill your coffee while walking through a virtual gallery and not ruin any actual art. Imagine that. One minute you're dodging paint blobs in a VR Van Gogh exhibit. Next thing you know, your dog's looking at you like you're playing invisible frisbee. It's the future, man. Wear a helmet.
Yeah, but think about it. Doesn't something get lost in translation there? Like standing in front of a real Van Gogh, feeling the brush strokes with your eyes. That's an experience a headset just can't replicate. Sure, VR is convenient and yeah, mess-free, but man, isn't there value to physically being in an art space? Feeling that buzz around you? What about that sensory part of art? Don't you think we might be trading depth for accessibility here?
Um, Joe, you've got a point there, man. Like standing in front of an actual painting, there's this energy, kind of like the artist is right there with you. And yeah, VR is cool and everything, but it can feel a little sterile. You don't get to smell the paint or feel that hush fall over the crowd when you walk into a gallery. I do worry we might be glossing over those deep, gritty art vibes for something shiny and new.
Totally, Simon. It's like music. Sure, digital is crisp, clean, convenient, but vinyl, that's got warmth, crackle, it's alive. There's something raw about being in the same space where actual art lives and breathes. VR's cutting edge, but it can't replace the smell of old canvas or the awe of walking through an art museum's halls. We gotta remember to keep balance and not lose those real-world experiences.
Absolutely, Joe. But hey, you know what's interesting? Statistics show more museums and galleries are now adopting VR to reach wider audiences who can't visit them physically. They use high-res scans of artworks, down to the texture. So, if you're sitting at home in, let's say, Nebraska, you can still stroll through the Louvre. That's powerful, right? And about keeping it real, there's this trend where VR experiences also include physical elements, like wind or sense, matching what you see. It's not just sight and sound anymore. They're going all out, trying hard to bridge that gap between digital convenience and the authentic experience. Isn't that something?
Yeah, Simon, that's impressive tech for sure. But let's not forget, the essence of experiencing art is more than just sensory inputs, right? It's about the moment, the atmosphere, being there. I mean, VR adds layers, true, but does it really capture the spontaneous moments like a light shift through museum windows or the energy of other art appreciators around you? Even with scents and wind, it feels kind of like we're trying too hard to simulate what naturally occurs in life. Isn't there a risk of, diluting the genuine thrill of real experiences in the chase for wider access?
Yeah, man, you're hitting like the nail on the head here. It's like when you're eating those foam bananas instead of the actual fruit. Sure, they kind of taste banana-ish, but it's just not the real deal, right? Exactly how I feel about VR. I get the urge to make art super accessible, which is cool and all, but somehow it just feels like we might be painting over the cracks rather than dealing with the problem directly. You can pump fake wind and pipe in museum smells all you want, but you're right. It's those unplanned, raw moments that really feed your soul. Imagine goofing around with their friends at an art show or bumping into someone who could change your life. Life's weird and wonderful like that. Hard to package that in a VR headset, if you ask me.
Absolutely, you've got it, Simon. It's like we're in this dynamic shift, right? We've got to ask ourselves what's genuinely beneficial in the long run. VR, it's groundbreaking for sure. It democratizes art in a way nothing else can. But sacrificing those real-life connections, spontaneity, it makes you wonder, are we maybe losing essential parts of our human experience? There's that fantastic push-pull here between progress and preservation. Technology lets us expand, reach people who never would have stepped into a gallery or museum otherwise. That's crucial. But then there's deeper stuff, like presence, engagement, that seemingly minor yet profound impact of really physically being somewhere. What do you think, man? Where's the line here? How do we keep advancing without losing the soul of these experiences?
Man, Joe, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? This reminds me of when I tried one of those VR escape rooms with my buddy. We were supposed to be crack detectives or something, solving puzzles in a doomed art museum. And there we were, in the living room, tripping over the cat and knocking into furniture. But in the headset, we were these heroes racing through time to save priceless artworks from destruction. It was nuts. Tech was amazing, felt real. Scents they piped in, dust, old wood, hint of varnish. I swear, man, it's like they raided an actual museum for those smells. But here's the kicker. While all this fancy stuff added layers, I realized it didn't compare to the trip I took to the real National Gallery. This old place, echoes in the marble halls, light playing through windows on canvases, got truly lost in the art. So, it hits you. VR's brilliant for making things accessible, breaking down walls. Technology brings us close, very close. But that ambiance of physical places, the unpredictable, tangible vibes around real artifacts, that's another layer that VR's still grappling to grasp fully. How do we keep that essence alive in tech? We gotta maybe blend both worlds smartly, respect the roots while pushing boundaries. What say you about that blend, Joe?
You're spot on, Simon. Now think, could we ever see a day where VR and reality aren't just side by side, but literally integrated? Where stepping into your local museum might come with options. Click here for the Renaissance, swipe there for surrealism, both enhanced by VR, yet still grounded in the real-world experience. Could be a wild blend, huh? What are your thoughts on that future mashup?
Man, that's like having your cake and eating it too, mixing chocolate with vanilla. Imagine strapping on a headset and suddenly you're chilling with Da Vinci as he touches up the Mona Lisa. Then you swipe and boom, you're at a Dali exhibition watching melting clocks. That's not just a mashup, that's like the ultimate art buffet.
But see, here's a thing, Simon. While that mashup sounds super cool, like you're hopping through art history with a magic remote, it also throws up some serious concerns about authenticity, right? Because think about it. When you blend so much so fast, does each piece still get its moment? Does Mona Lisa's smile hold the same enigma when she's just one swipe away from melting clocks? Plus, historical context gets diluted. Each artwork comes from a unique time and place, carrying deep cultural significance. Rushing from Da Vinci to Dali might make viewers miss the essence of why these works were revolutionary. It's true tech can open doors, but in speeding up our consumption, we must make sure not to blur lines too much where learning becomes fleeting instead of impactful.
You nailed it, Joe. Rushing through art masterpieces without soaking in the essence, like sipping fine wine too fast. It's about striking that balance. With tech moving so fast, it's a whole universe to explore how we handle these treasures of humanity. Maybe the future holds keys to perfect this blend, where VR complements rather than overtakes. What'll it look like next year, or even a decade from now? Keeps you thinking, huh?
Speaking of blending realities, Simon, it's not just in art where boundaries are getting blurred. Look at gaming and cinema lately. Interactive storytelling is reshaping narratives completely, where the audience isn't just watching, they're part of the story, making decisions, driving outcomes. It's like they're directing their own movie or shaping their game while playing it. What's your take on this evolution? How do you see it playing out in VR or with AI narrations?
Yeah, it's wild how storytelling's morphed, huh? Like users tossing their hats in the ring and directing where the story heads. That's a whole new level of engagement. But here's a thought. Doesn't that sometimes put too much on the viewer or player? Kind of like hey, here's a universe. Now go make something of it. That can be heavy lifting when maybe you just wanted to chill and enjoy the ride, not steer the ship. Plus, with everything driven by user choices, stories could lose their tight narrative arcs we've loved and followed through centuries of storytelling. There's this risk of, I don't know, diluting the plot into just a mishmash of consequences rather than a beautifully crafted saga. What about those quiet moments in movies where nobody makes a grand decision, but you're still hooked, glued to your seat by the tension or beauty or tragedy. Can an AI really replicate that delicate balance if it's always nudge nudge? Your turn to change the storyline.
Simon, you're hitting a crucial point. The challenge with this all-engaging narrative is, well, maintaining that core story integrity. It's like, if everyone's choosing their own paths, how do we keep that narrative quality? There's magic in crafted storytelling, where the author or director guides you, pulling emotional responses from deep within. Can a user-driven plot achieve that? Maybe not to the same degree. And then there's AI. Sure, it's cool to think an AI narrator could dynamically adjust plots, but consider subtlety, nuances that great directors or writers weave into scenes. Those aren't just about plot choices, but about delivering moments that stick with us long after the credits roll. So we gotta ask, can AI really replicate such artistry, or does it just offer a more sterile, albeit personalized, storyline? What are your thoughts on balancing these elements in future narratives?
Man, it's like AI wants to be the next Spielberg or something. But can a machine really tug at your heartstrings like the scene from Up? Doubt it. There's got to be a sweet spot where AI and human creativity meet without losing that magic spark. What if we experiment more with this blend? Picture this, an AI that learns from our emotional responses, not just our choices. Could be game-changing, huh?
Totally, Simon. Imagine AI evolving from just interactive to intuitive. Might start hitting those emotional beats more accurately. How deep can technology dive into our psyche to deliver not just stories we like, but stories that change us? Let's chew on that.
Spot on, Joe. Delving into our psyche sounds pretty intense, right? It's like when you've got your hands on the remote ready to change the channel, but then bam, the show pulls a plot twist. Next thing you know, you're emotionally invested. Hello. Nobody asked for these feelings, and yet here they are. That's the future I'm curious about. Can an AI really get us there, though? Make us cry or laugh, not because it calculated our preferences, but because it truly understands the human experience. If tech can nail that, man, we're basically living in what, Star Trek? Beam me up to Philo-Vision.
Simon, you're on to something, but let's hit pause. Truly understanding the human experience, that's a tall order for AI, right? Consider this. Human emotions are complex, muddled, influenced by myriad factors, past experiences, cultural background, even our mood that day. Can AI nudge itself into such delicate spaces without making it all feel programmed or predictable? We're talking about crafting experiences that resonate on a personal and emotional level. There's an authenticity in human-created stories, an unpredictability that's super hard to replicate with algorithms. Moreover, balance is key. It's like, how do we preserve creators' intent while offering this wide array of choice to the user? How much control can we give before a narrative loses its soul, morphs into just a slew of anticipated reactions or endings dictated by majority preferences? Navigating these waters will be fascinating, man. But I'm not completely sold yet on AI taking the reins. What are your thoughts on striking that essential balance?
You're right, Joe. Striking that balance feels kind of like a tightrope walk over a digital canyon, doesn't it? We definitely don't want stories to just morph into what the majority expects or prefers, like turning every movie into a superhero brawl because it's safe and sells. Here's an idea. Maybe keep AI as a tool, not the storyteller. Use AI to enhance narratives created by humans, add branches, diversify without losing the original flavor. Keep the core story intact, a strong, crafted narrative with all its unpredictable beauty that resonates deeply because it was made by humans, for humans. The tech should serve the art, not replace it. What do you think? Could that be the way to keep the soul in our stories while embracing the future?
Exactly, Simon. Keep AI as the ultimate assistant, not the boss. It's like having a supercharged paintbrush that doesn't control what's on the canvas but enhances every stroke you make. Keeps things spicy without tipping the pot. How about we dive into how this tech could revolutionize other creative fields?
Totally. And that reminds me of this time when I played around with one of those music mixing apps. Have you tried those? It's like they let you be the DJ, right? But here's the kicker. It was back in college, super broke, could barely afford textbooks, let alone fancy instruments or software. So, there I am, using this app, which relies partially on AI to suggest beats and melodies based on what I'd mixed before. It felt like having a ghost producer. Reflecting on it now, it's not just boosting personal creativity, but steering it a bit, subtly enough that I still felt ownership over the final playlist. Like, it's still me DJing at our infamous end-of-semester parties, but with an invisible hand guiding the turntable. That's kind of what we're talking about here, right? Keeping our hands on the wheel while technology pumps the gas. Gives you room to maneuver, but makes sure you're powered up enough to dodge the potholes. Makes you wonder, how far could this go in more complex creative fields?
Absolutely, Simon. It's like having a co-pilot in the creative process. Tech can push us to explore territories we might not venture into alone. The potential to expand this into bigger fields like writing, filmmaking, is massive. Makes you think about all the future unknowns, right? What new landscapes will we navigate when we blend human creativity with machine precision even further? It's an endless road and definitely lots to chew on as tech evolves.
Yeah, talking about blending tech and creativity, it kind of loops back to our chat about AI. Imagine AI getting good at comedy, crafting jokes. You think we'll see the day when comedians are sweating over a machine, stealing their spotlight?
Well, here's the thing, Simon. I'm not totally sold on AI mastering comedy just yet. Crafting jokes isn't just about timing or wordplay. It's about understanding and engaging with a live audience, right? A human comedian can read the room, improvise based on reactions in real time. AI scripted humor, it tends to miss those subtleties, nuances that make comedy feel like genuine. Plus, comedy often draws from personal experiences, social context, cultural nuances, stuff that's steeped in human complexity. We've seen AI constructed jokes that are technically correct, but they kind of lack soul or spontaneity. While I think AI might spice up scripts or provide logistics, the art of making people laugh will likely remain a deeply human game for quite some time. What's your take?
Yeah. You've hit the nail right on the head. Jokes from a machine? I mean, sometimes they're like that salad at a steak dinner, technically present, but not hitting the spot, right? And speaking of context, like, remember when I tried to tell that joke I read online at my cousin's wedding? Crash and burn. It just didn't resonate because those AI-generated punchlines lacked personal touch, nuance, and timing. But here's a thought, flipping the coin. Could there be a space where AI comedy works? Maybe it's in writing sitcoms or sketch shows where you can edit, tweak, test before it hits the audience. What do you think, Joe? Could that sort of controlled setup give AI a fighting chance in comedy?
Definitely, Simon. Thinking about AI in controlled comedic setups like sitcoms or sketches, that's where it might just work. See, in those scenarios, the feedback loop involves writers and editors who can test, modify, and optimize jokes before they ever reach an audience. So there's room to fine-tune. Plus, AI could serve as a creative tool to generate multiple variations of jokes, giving writers a wider range of options to choose from. Think about rapid-fire sitcom exchanges. AI could suggest a bunch of punchlines, speeding up the brainstorming process. Still, the crucial bit remains the human touch, selecting which lines actually make it, ensuring they resonate on a human level. So while AI might not be headlining at comedy clubs anytime soon, there's potential in scripting environments where its suggestions can be curated. It's like having a really efficient, if somewhat emotionally clueless, writing partner.
True that. Imagine a sitcom episode written by AI about AI trying to be funny. Would it be hysterical or just super meta? Now that's a script I'd binge watch.
Haha, right? That would be a wild ride. An AI cracking jokes about trying to understand human humor. It's like watching a robot in a comedy class. Could be both hysterical and super meta indeed. But there's potential brilliance in that self-awareness. The AI mirroring its own learning curve in the world of joke crafting. Would audiences connect with it? Maybe. It's like they're in on the joke from the get-go, watching this AI navigate the pitfalls and triumphs of comedy. Plus, blending real-life reactions from audiences could deepen the narrative, making it more engaging. Could be a hit or a miss, but definitely worth the experiment. What do you think, Simon?
Oh, absolutely, Joe. Like, imagine the AI starting its set all smooth and then landing a joke that just flops. Seeing it recalibrate in real time, trying to win back the crowd, there's something kind of endearing about an underdog story, even if it's, a computer. What could really tip the scales is if audiences start rooting for the AI, kind of how we root for contestants on those reality shows. Do you think that personal connection with viewers wouldn't just make the jokes land better, but also turn our metallic buddy into, a beloved character?
Absolutely, Simon. That personal connection does a lot of the heavy lifting, even with AI. If the audience starts empathizing with this AI character, seeing it struggle, adjust, and grow, it's no longer just about the jokes themselves. It's like they're cheering on someone learning a difficult skill in real time. And that's crucial because comedy thrives on empathy. It's why we laugh when comedians share relatable experiences or epic fails. So, injecting a bit of humanity, some vulnerability into the AI could transform it from a mere joke machine to a character people actually care about. Think about it. Each failed joke becomes part of a larger story of perseverance, and every success feels like a shared victory. So yeah, that connection, it's vital. It might just make all the difference in whether an AI comedian can truly resonate with viewers or not. What are your thoughts on molding such a dynamic character? Simon?
Absolutely, Joe. Turning AI into a character with a story of its own, learning to crack a joke, that's golden, right? Makes me think about the endless possibilities for stories where technology and humanity converge. Injecting heart and struggle could open up whole new genres of comedy. What wild scenarios might we find ourselves laughing at next with AI on the stage? The future's definitely ripe for some groundbreaking humor.
Speaking of technology blurring lines in comedy, it gets me thinking about another place where tech really pushes boundaries: historical documentaries and biopics. Using deepfake technology to recreate past figures or events. There's a whole lot of ethical tightroping going on there. What's your take on that, Simon? Balancing authenticity with creativity while keeping things ethical must be tough.
Oh, totally, Joe. The whole deepfake scene is like walking a tightrope over a canyon, messy if you slip. Creatively, it's tempting, right? Imagine bringing historical figures to life, making those old black and white photos move and talk. It's almost magical. But then, you hit the brick wall of ethics. Like, what if it misrepresents the figure, adds bias, or worse, alters history? Schools might use these documentaries to teach kids, so accuracy is crucial. The stakes, that's what gets me. It's not just about dazzling visuals, but shaping perceptions of our past. So where's the line? Maybe it's transparency, like always disclosing when and how deepfake tech was used. That could help viewers distinguish between genuine footage and creative liberties. It's tough, man, balancing that art and truth.
Yeah, transparency seems key, like letting viewers in on the magic trick behind the curtain. That could help maintain that trust, right? But then there's that tricky part of how much liberty is too much before it starts messing with the truth. It's a slippery slope. I wonder, do you think there's room for something like an ethical guideline or a standard protocol when using deepfake tech in these kinds of projects? Could that kind of regulation help keep things in check, maybe provide some balance between creativity and authenticity? What's your feeling on this, Simon?
Joe, an ethical guideline sounds pretty solid in theory. It's like building guardrails, right? But then, let's push on that a bit. Who decides what's in these guidelines? There's always that fear of them being too strict or too loose. And tech moves fast, way faster than our ability to regulate it. Plus, creativity by nature is about pushing boundaries. Put too many rules, and you might just stifle the very creativity we're hoping to inspire. I'm kind of torn here. It's a double-edged sword. Maybe instead of hard rules, we need a continual conversation among filmmakers, historians, ethicists, and the audience, too. What do you think, Joe? Can we keep up with such a dynamic field through constant dialogue, or is that just idealistic?
Yeah, Simon, you're hitting it right there with the need for ongoing dialogue. It's like, without that conversation evolving as fast as the technology, we risk getting left behind with outdated norms. And think about the rapid advancements in AI and digital tech. They're not slowing down, so our ethical discussions can't afford to lag either. The key might be in developing an adaptable framework where guidelines can be quickly updated as new problems emerge. Kindly like patching software, you know? This keeps things flexible but responsible. Plus, involving a wide range of voices from different disciplines ensures that we're considering all angles, from historical accuracy to artistic expression, which is super crucial. So it's not just idealistic, I think it's pretty necessary. It's about staying proactive rather than reacting when things go sideways. What do you reckon? Is this a feasible approach, or are we dreaming too big here?
Well, Joe, that's a solid point about adapting quickly with guidelines. But let me play devil's advocate here for a sec. What if this continuous updating leads to like inconsistency? You know, too many cooks in the kitchen kind of scenario where too much input makes the rules all muddied and confusing. Then there's the practical side of things, like who enforces these guidelines? And how do we even ensure compliance across countries with different legal systems and cultural values? Stuff gets complicated fast. It might seem appealing to have this super dynamic guideline system, but man, the risk of creating a patchy, unclear standard could like backfire, leading to more problems than solutions. Sometimes simpler, more stable rules might actually do a better job at keeping everyone on the same page. What are your thoughts, man? Are these concerns enough to give us pause, or is the push for flexibility worth the potential chaos?
Oh, Simon, you're digging into a real can of worms there. It's like choosing between sailing in uncharted waters or sticking to old maps while knowing there might be treasures or monsters lurking off the edges. Both sides have their dangers and thrills. Really makes you think about how we navigate these tech advancements without capsizing. What's our next move then? Do we play it safe, or do we dive into these murky waters headfirst?
Well, Joe, why not mix it up? Maybe start testing these waters with a pilot project, a sort of sandbox approach where filmmakers can experiment under watchful eyes before full-scale implementation. It's like dipping toes in the pool without diving headfirst. Could be the middle ground we're looking for, huh? What do you think?
That sandbox idea, that's interesting, Simon. But here's a pushback. Even with a controlled environment, once something hits the public domain, it can spiral out of control. You know? Especially with deepfake technology where seeing is no longer believing. And like, think about this. If those pilot projects do well, they set a precedent, could lead to a slippery slope where exceptions become the norm. Then, we're back to square one with all sorts of manipulated content being justified as creative interpretation. But still, testing in a controlled way isn't a terrible idea. It gives us some data to work with before making sweeping policy changes. It's just managing the fallout and keeping tight reins on it, that's going to be crucial. What are your thoughts on containing that potential spread or misuse once things start rolling out? Is there a fail-safe, or are we playing with fire here?
Yeah, Joe, you're hitting the nail on the head. Once these technologies are out there, reining them in is like trying to stuff toothpaste back into the tube, messy and nearly impossible. The sandbox could light the match, or it might just fizzle out. But either way, it's about balancing that creative spark with a big bucket of ethical water right beside it. We're definitely poking at some sci-fi level dilemmas here. And as we navigate these deeper waters, gauging how much freedom versus control is needed will keep being a compelling and controversial chat. Man, what a mind-bender this tech is turning out to be. What's next on this wild ride?
Speaking of tech pushing the boundaries in creative fields, Simon, it's not just film that's getting a tech makeover. Theater is also stepping into the future with augmented reality. So from historical figures to live performances, it seems like no stage is left untouched by technology. It's like watching a new act unfold. But is this an evolution of stagecraft or just a flashy gimmick? What's your vibe on this?
Well, Joe, while I'm all for tech advancement, slapping AR onto theater could feel kind of gimmicky. Think about it. The charm of theater is its rawness, right? It's that visceral, live connection. Performers and audience, same room, real-time reactions. Throwing in AR might, dilute that. Could turn a soulful performance into another screen time session. And historical attempts at integrating tech in live performances, they haven't always been home runs. Sometimes they overshadow the human element, which is like the heart of theater. There's also the accessibility issue. Not everyone's up for or can afford these high-tech shows. So while it's neat and flashy, could be we're risking the essence of what makes theater so uniquely powerful. What do you think, Joe? Are we trading magic for mechanics here?
Simon, you've got some solid points about maintaining the spirit of theater. But here's a spin. Maybe AR isn't swamping the realness but enhancing it, like adding layers rather than replacing them, like when they project live backgrounds that change with the story, or maybe even let the audience interact with the scene. It could pull people deeper into the experience instead of detaching them. Now consider traditionalists who cherish old-school theater. Yeah, for sure, there's pushback. They might see it as unnecessary frills. But what if AR helps to draw in a crowd that wouldn't otherwise set foot in a theater? Could be a way to keep the art form alive and kicking in a digital age. Accessibility issues aside, which are totally valid, integrating modern tech could open up new creative avenues and reach audiences on a whole new level. So, while there's always a risk of losing the essence, maybe it's also a chance to evolve the craft. What's your take, Simon? Are these possibilities exciting, or do they mess too much with the classic vibe of theater as we know it?
Joe, it's kind of like we're in a sci-fi flick where the tech starts to take over. The question is, do we end up with a blockbuster hit or a total system crash? Evolving or revolving? That's the cliffhanger.
Simon, that reminds me of this one time I saw a play with no AR, just traditional stuff. And halfway through, the power went out. Just total darkness, right? But instead of falling apart, the actors improvised with flashlights they found backstage. It turned into this super intimate, kind of eerie performance that just captivated everyone. It got me thinking, sometimes it's those unplanned, raw moments that stick with us the most. Not the flashy effects or high-tech gimmicks, but human creativity shining through in unexpected ways. So yeah, AR can definitely add layers to a story, make it more immersive, and maybe even broaden the appeal. But there's something about keeping theater grounded in its roots, where simple stories have the power to stir deep emotions without all the extra tech. What do you think, man? Can we find a balance here, or are we swinging too far one way?
Uh, that's a killer story, Joe. Like, it really highlights how unpredictable and raw theater can be. And you're right, man. Sometimes those stripped down, unplanned moments, they hit different, don't they? They stick with you because they feel so real. AR's cool for the bells and whistles, sure, but does it risk smothering that raw, pure magic under all the tech? I'm torn because while we want to keep moving forward, there's this authentic charm in simplicity we don't want to lose. What do you think? Are we treading carefully enough not to lose that human touch? Or, is the allure of technology kind of blinding us here?
Here's the flip side, Simon. While there's that risk of smothering the rawness, think about it. AR can also be a tool that doesn't dominate but supports the storytelling. Let's take info from some theaters already experimenting with AR. It enhances visuals or adds subtle cues that deepen the narrative without overshadowing the performance itself. Look at successful Broadway tech integrations. They use technology not to replace but to amplify what's inherently there, the emotion, the human connection. And from an educational standpoint, AR could help interpret complex scenes or historical contexts, making theater more accessible and enriching for audiences who might need a bit more context to fully engage. So while there's certainly validity in treasuring tradition, integrating modern tech like AR, if done thoughtfully, might not just preserve but energize traditional theater arts by broadening their appeal. It's about balance, right? Not letting the tech lead, but letting it lend a hand. What's your stance, man? Are these possibilities enough to give AR a cautious thumbs up in the theater world?
Oh man, Joe, now you're throwing the spotlight on a game changer. It's like having a sidekick. Is AR the trusty Robin to our traditional Batman in theater? It could totally spice things up without stealing the show. Let's crack that balance, eh? What's next on this tech meets tradition roller coaster?
Absolutely, Simon. It's intriguing to think about AR as more of a dynamic partnership within the arts. Now, pivoting a bit, let's actually zoom in on some concrete examples. There have been some trailblazing productions out there really pushing the envelope with AR technology. Diving into these will give us real meat to chew on about how it's shaping up live theater. What's been happening on those groundbreaking stages?
Well, Joe, there's been this wave, right? Like, take the AR-enhanced Shakespeare productions. You have classic monologues, but now with interactive backdrops that change based on the character's emotional flow. Super cool stuff. Audiences are like, wow, is this magic or what? It's catapulting them rightly into the scene. And critics, some are totally on board, praising how AR magnifies the drama without, stealing the spotlight. But others feel it's a bit much, maybe even distracting from the words themselves. So, Joe, what's your take on this mixed bag of reactions? Are we finding that these enhancements tell a deeper story or just adding unnecessary fluff to the stage?
So here's the thing, Simon. Those Shakespeare productions sound totally rad with AR adding that layer of depth. But it's like we're at a crossroads, right? Do these tech enhancements truly deepen the narrative, or are they just eye candy? I lean towards seeing AR as a powerful tool if used right. It shouldn't overshadow the essence of theater, but support it. Look, when audiences say they feel catapulted right into the scene, that's huge. That means immersion is dialed up, not just dazzle. And for critics, sure, some might see it as fluff, which, it can be a valid point if the tech starts to outshine the plot or the performances. So what we've got here isn't just tech for the sake of tech. It's about enhancing storytelling in ways that connect more palpably with today's audience. This balance between tradition and innovation, it's delicate but achievable, right? Use AR to enhance, not to dominate. Simon, how do you think producers should navigate this fine line to, keep both traditionalists and tech enthusiasts happy?
You're spot on, Joe, about that fine line. But here's my pinch of skepticism. How much enhancement is too much before the AR starts to call the shots, overshadowing the actors in the story? Producers got to tread super careful. It's like walking over a shiny new tech bridge, but still keeping an eye on the solid old ground behind. Should producers use AR to just sprinkle some futurism or go full-blown sci-fi on stage? Saying it could enrich storytelling sounds fabulous, right? But sometimes, man, it feels like they're smacking us with a tech hammer just because they can, not because it serves the story. Technology should be like seasoning, not the main dish. And hey, navigating audience expectations is tricky. Some come for the raw human touch of traditional theater, while others might crave the bling of high-tech shows. The blend needs to resonate without alienating any side of the audience spectrum. What's really crucial, though, making sure these AR integrations are accessible and inclusive, meaning they add value rather than just exclusivity. So, Joe, think we're crafting a new era of live performances or just complicating what works beautifully in its simplicity?
That's a hell of a point, Simon. It's almost like we're chefs in a kitchen deciding whether to stick to the classic recipe or throw in some new spices. Maybe this is less about complicating things and more about experimenting, finding new flavors that can coexist with the old favorites. Could be we're on the cusp of redefining the theater experience altogether. What does this mix mean for the future of live entertainment?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like we're remixing an old song, adding some cool beats without losing the classic tune. The stage is set for an epic mashup of old and new. What kind of wild mashups could we see next in theater?
Yeah, Simon. Thinking about those wild mashups, we could see genres merging in ways we haven't even imagined. Like, imagine a Shakespeare play with a virtual reality twist where the audience can actually walk through the scenes as they unfold. Or maybe musicals where live music blends with digital effects to make the audience feel like they're part of the orchestra. It's kind of like the possibilities are endless when you start mixing the old with the new tech tools at our disposal. What do you think would be the most exciting mix for you, Simon? Got any particular dream mashup in mind?
Diving deeper into those groundbreaking AR enhanced theater cases, like the juxtaposition between classic texts and cutting edge tech, sparks a wild array of creativities. But importantly, it's not just about wow factors. These integrations often aim to deepen audience engagement and understanding. For instance, imagine an ancient Greek tragedy where AR helps illustrate mythological elements in real time, making dense historical content more digestible and immediately impactful for the audience, enriching their overall experience. It's kind of like having a translator who doesn't just translate the language, but also contextualizes the cultural nuances right there on stage. So, technological enhancements can truly transform the bare-bones narrative into a fully immersive spectacle that both honors traditions and embraces innovation. This delicate dance of merging eras is pivotal, ensuring that while the format evolves, the storytelling essence remains sacred. There are challenges, sure, like ensuring tech reliability during live performances, but overcoming these hurdles just adds to the thrill and dynamism of modern theater. What about you, Joe? Any specific elements you'd love to see enhanced or particular stories that could be told through this tech-expanded lens?
Uh, yeah, Simon, that's a killer idea with the Greek tragedies. Using AR to peel back layers of those ancient stories could really bring them to life in a way that clicks with today's audiences. You know, like making these age-old tales feel fresh and new again. And thinking about specific elements, I'd be psyched to see interactive environments where the audience can influence the story based on their reactions, like choose your own adventure style, but on stage. Could add a whole new level of engagement. So, digging into what you said about enhancing understanding, do you think there's a particular play or genre that would benefit most from this kind of tech infusion?
Oh, definitely, Joe. Imagine slapping some AR magic on a noir detective story. Suddenly, audience members could uncover clues alongside the protagonist. It'd be like being in your own crime thriller. What genre do you think would get a wild twist with AR thrown into the mix?
Uh, Noir with AR? Now that's a picture I'd love to see painted. Imagine the shadows shifting around as if you're right there in those dark, foggy streets. It's like peeking behind the curtain of reality into something deeper. That would redefine interaction in storytelling. And thinking wider, genres like fantasy or sci-fi with sprawling worlds could also massively benefit from AR, immersing the audience directly into those outlandish landscapes and stories. The potential's explosive. What do you think, Simon? Ready to dive deeper into how other genres might evolve with AR?
Totally, Joe. Diving into all these potential enhancements across genres is thrilling. But sometimes this tech stuff, it doesn't always play nice, right? That mix can lead to some pretty hilarious onstage snafus when AR decides to have a mind of its own. So, Joe, ever heard about those laugh lines through lenses mishaps? Like imagine a play where the AR was supposed to create a magical forest, but instead it pops up a neon disco. Talk about setting confusion. Got any fun flops in shows with AR gone wild?
Oh, absolutely, Simon. These tech glitches can seriously turn into comedy gold. There was this one show where the AR was supposed to project a frightening storm scene, right? But instead it threw up bright sunny skies with rainbows. Talk about mixed signals. The actors had to pretend they were terrified of a beautiful day. It was priceless. These snafus, though, they're not just funny, they really test the mettle of performers. It's like live theater on steroids. Anything can happen, and you've just got to roll with it. Keeps everyone on their toes, actors and audience alike. That kind of unpredictability with AR can actually spike engagement because every show becomes a unique experience. What do you think, Simon? Does that add an extra layer of must-see to live performances?
Go ahead with that thought, Joe. But isn't it kind of like when you're at a comedy show expecting a pie to the face and get confetti instead? Sure, unpredictable AR can make each performance unique, which is cool and all. But doesn't it sometimes feel less like added value and more like, hey, we didn't sign up for this roller coaster? Like, think about it. Audiences come for a specific experience, right? And if every night's a wild card of tech mishaps, yeah, it's funny maybe once or twice, but could also be a turnoff, overwhelming the story itself. You gotta wonder if the unpredictability overshadows the craft. So yet, Joe, do these AR hiccups really spice things up positively, Or are they just annoying interruptions that need smoother handling? What's the sweet spot here between hilarious surprise and annoying distraction?
Yeah, Simon, that's a spot-on point. It's kind of like you're jazzed for a haunted house and end up in a bunny petting zoo instead. Fun, but not what you signed up for, right? These tech hiccups can definitely throw off the vibe if they're not handled slickly. But here's a thought. Maybe it's about striking that balance where AR enhances rather than overtakes, like having fail-safes or even incorporating potential glitches as part of the show's charm could be key. Keep things flexible but controlled so the audience gets their thrills without the spills. Do you think there's a way, Simon, to prep audiences ahead of time about this kind of unpredictability? Like a heads up that each show might have unique features, turning potential bugs into Easter eggs? What's your take on managing audience expectations in this digital age of theater?
Oh man, Joe, that's like turning every show into a scavenger hunt. Unexpected AR surprises as hidden treasures. Could definitely see that catching on. But honesty up front might be key, right? Like give them a cheeky warning. Expect the unexpected, or even a disco ball. Keeps everyone in on the joke and maybe ramps up the excitement. Who doesn't love a good Easter egg hunt during their theater evening, huh? How do you think audiences would react to that twist, Joe?
Definitely, Simon. Giving that upfront warning kind of flips the script, right? Instead of shock or annoyance from AR mishaps, it's excitement and curiosity. It's almost like making every performance a version of the Rocky Horror Picture Show where audience participation actually becomes part of the charm. So think about it. People could come not just for the play, but also for the what might go wrong tonight factor. It turns potential tech drawbacks into interactive features. They're no longer just spectators, but participants in a dynamic experience. Plus, this approach might relax both the performers and the tech crew, knowing that everyone's engaged in this shared adventure. Creates a more forgiving and playful atmosphere all around. So yeah, what do you say, Simon? Could this possibly redefine attending live theater, making it even more popular in our digital age?
Well, yeah, Joe, that sounds pretty fun on paper. But like, not everyone's jazzed about surprises, right? I mean, some folks just want to see the show they signed up for, no extra frills or spills. It's cool for those who dig the what might go wrong vibe. But what about the traditional theater goers? Wouldn't it be like better maybe to separate these kind of experimental shows from your standard fare? This way, you attract both the adventure seekers and the purists without stepping on anyone's toes. Kind of like having different flavors of ice cream. Choose your scoop. Know what you're getting into. So, do you think that'd work, Joe? Or is mixing it all in one big theatrical melting pot the way to go? What's your take on finding that audience balance?
Yeah, Simon, the choose your scoop approach makes a ton of sense. By separating the experiences, you cater to different tastes without compromising anyone's evening out. It's a solid way to manage expectations while still being inclusive of various audience types, those yearning for familiarity and those craving spontaneity. It really could be the best of both worlds, huh? Leaves me wondering which unique flavors we might see pop up if theaters embrace this route. What kind of new combinations could emerge from such a flexible model?
Oh man, Joe, brace yourself because we're about to dive into some futuristic wizardry here. Imagine AR getting so advanced that the line between actor and audience just vanishes. Every seat comes with a choice. Watch it or live it. How wild would that be? Let's unpack this sci-fi theater scenario a bit more.
For sure, Simon. It's wild to think about. Like if AR lets every audience member choose their involvement level, that really shakes up the traditional performance dynamic, right? You're not just sitting back, you could be stepping into the story, affecting outcomes as you go. This tech could fundamentally change how we define audience. With more interactive choices, it's less about watching a show and more about being part of it. But gotta wonder, Simon, what does this mean for privacy or the pressure to participate? Could some folks feel too exposed or pushed out of their comfort zones? How do we balance that thrill of immersion with ensuring everyone still enjoys the show on their terms?
Well, Joe, diving into the nitty-gritty, You've got a point about the push-pull of privacy and participation. Fact is, AR can track and adapt based on user reactions, eye tracking, physiological responses, you name it, which means it's gathering personal data in real time. Scary for some, right? But necessary for that personalized experience. On top of that, folks might worry about being pressured to interact more than they're comfy with. It's a delicate dance. Historically, passive entertainment lets people chill back, but this new wave, it demands engagement. Now, balancing that will be crucial. Perhaps offering levels of interaction, from observer to participant, could keep everyone in their happy place without feeling overwhelmed or spied on. What do you reckon, Joe? How should theaters navigate these waters?
Definitely see where you're headed with that, Simon. Giving options for engagement levels is crucial. But there's also the big question of data privacy we can't skate over. If people know their reactions might be monitored and used to tailor experiences, could they start holding back? Feel less free to genuinely react if they're worried about their data being collected. Plus, think about this. More interaction means a heftier demand on the technical side. What if the tech can't keep up or messes up? That's not just a small hitch. It could ruin the whole experience. So while the possibility of integrating more AR sounds thrilling, the implementation has got to be rock solid. So yeah, Simon, pushing boundaries is great, but we shouldn't leap without looking at all these potential pitfalls, right? How do you think we can ensure these innovative experiences don't just become gimmicks or even worse, a privacy nightmare?
Oh, totally, Joe. It's like we're giving the audience a superpower, but also asking them to trust us with their deepest fears about privacy. We're literally crafting theater for the superhero age. But hey, even superheroes have their vulnerabilities, right? How can we make sure this power doesn't come with a price too steep? Let's dream up some safeguards to keep everyone's cape clean while they enjoy the show.
Yeah, Simon, that's a really good point. Granting superpowers is cool and all, but the trust issue, that's huge, man. It kind of makes me worried about just how much we're diving into without maybe setting up enough safety nets. For starters, clear consent forms could be a must. Transparency about what data is collected and how it'll be used can prevent misunderstanding from audiences. Plus, having an easy opt-out, letting people enjoy the show without any AR if they choose, might help those feeling uneasy about their privacy. And tech training sessions for cast and crew could make a big difference. Ensuring everyone's on the same page might minimize tech snafus that could disrupt the whole experience. So, Simon, do these steps sound like they'd put some safety rails around our superhero theater? What more can we add to keep things smooth and secure?
Yeah, Joe, you're hitting the nail on the head. Totally on board with those safety rails, like transparency and options for opting out are super key to keep everyone feeling safe and respected, right? And training, absolutely. That's a game changer, making sure everyone involved is really dialed in so that tech does what it's supposed to do without causing a major scene. But here's a thought. What about periodic reviews or feedback sessions from the audiences? Could kind of act as a temperature check, see if people are actually digging the AR or if it's freaking them out. Think this sort of ongoing dialogue could help theaters fine-tune the experience, keeping it exciting without crossing into, creepy territory. How would you structure these kinds of feedback loops, Joe? Want to make sure we're not just bombarding folks with more stuff, but actually using their input effectively.
Absolutely, Simon. Your idea of these feedback sessions, it's gold. Having a direct line where audiences can share their thoughts would be super informative, and it shows we're keeping the lines of communication open, which is crucial. But structuring it, we'd need to make it seamless, maybe right after the show when every detail's still fresh in their minds. Quick online polls or even moderated discussion groups might keep it organized without draining their energy. Ensuring it's voluntary but encouraged could also improve participation rates, like offering a discount for their next ticket if they complete a feedback form. And don't forget data analysts, eh? Having folks skilled at deciphering what all that feedback actually means, that'll help us really tune into what's working and what's just not hitting the mark. Sounds doable, huh?
Absolutely, Joe. And imagine adding a dash of AI to analyze those feedback emojis in real time, turning every frown and smile into instant stage adjustments. Theater meets tech, but like on steroids. How's that for keeping everyone on their toes?
Yeah, Simon, that high-tech flair really sets the stage for even crazier innovations, like holography. Imagine the depths we could dive in theater and concerts with 3D illusions literally floating around you. Speaking of which, let's shift gears a bit and unpack how these mind-bending visuals come to life on stage. How do you think holographic tech compares to our classic set designs?
Oh man, Joe, comparing holography to traditional set designs is like pitting a spaceship against a horse carriage. Classic sets have their charm, all tangible and crafted with painstaking detail. There's this texture and depth you can almost feel from your seat. But then, enter holography. Boom. You've got scenes flipping in seconds, visuals floating mid-air that just blow your mind. It's flashy and cutting edge, and the crowd can really get wowed by the spectacle. Yet, it might lack that warm, touchable authenticity of physical sets. So yeah, they're cool, but do they connect with the audience on the same level? That's the real question, huh? What's your take on this tech shift, Joe?
Yeah, Simon, you've nailed the contrast there. Holography definitely brings that wow factor on a scale that classical set designs can't touch, like flash over substance sometimes, right? But it's not just about what's flashier or more modern. We got to dig into whether these high-tech holograms actually enhance the storytelling or if they're just eye candy. On one side, the ability to shift scenes instant-rendously and immerse the audience in a fully 3D environment. That's groundbreaking. But does it risk pulling folks out of the narrative if it feels too unnatural? There's something about the authenticity of physical sets that keeps us grounded, even connected in ways digital illusions might not fully replicate. So while holography is, no doubt, an incredible tool, we have to be wary not to let it overshadow the core of theater, the story. Could it be that blending both might strike a better balance between tradition and innovation? What do you think about finding that middle ground where technology supports rather than dominates the artistic vision?
Man, Joe, trying to find a balance between old school sets and whiz-bang holograms is like deciding whether you want your grandma's homemade cookies or some space-age dessert shot out of a 3D food printer. Sure, those laser cookies might look cool spinning around your head, but are they going to hit the spot like grandma's chocolate chip? Sometimes you gotta sprinkle a little futuristic dust on the good old days and call it a show.
That's a solid point, Simon. Mixing the old and the new, it gives us the best of both worlds, right? Like you keep the warmth of traditional crafts while sprinkling in that wow factor with holography. Makes me wonder, though, how do audiences really feel about these mixes? Are they digging this hybrid experience, or does it kind of leave them wanting more of one over the other? What have you heard, man?
Well, Joe, from what I've gathered, it's kind of like when you're tuning into an epic movie at home versus hitting the theaters. At home, yeah, you're comfy, but the cinema, it's larger than life, man. With holograms stirring up the live scene, audiences are getting a taste of that cinema magic right in the theater. But like with any new tech, reactions are mixed. Some folks are all in, blown away by the sheer coolness and novelty. Who wouldn't be? But then there are purists, or maybe just fans of simpler times, who find it distracting when the tech overpowers the story. They crave that human touch, sets built by hand, props they can see are real. So while the buzz around holography is huge, ensuring it complements rather than overwhelms could be key to winning everyone over, kind of threading the needle carefully to keep the soul of theatrical experiences intact.
You're onto something, Simon. While that cinema-style magic in theaters is undeniably cool, I'm thinking about the essence, like what really makes theater theater. The risk with holography overshooting might be, I don't know, creating a spectacle at the cost of intimacy. It's intricate, right? For instance, think about classic plays where the setting feels almost like another character, so alive, so integral. If we swap all that out for holograms, Are we losing those subtle interactions between characters and their surroundings? Like how an actor leans on a real balcony might feel different than leaning on a digital one, yeah? So maybe the challenge here isn't just about adding new tech, but doing it in ways that deepen rather than dilute the storytelling experience. What could this look like, Simon, without compromising the traditional virtues of stagecraft?
Hey there, folks who are just tuning in. Me and Joe have been diving deep into this whole holography thing happening in theaters and concerts. It's like, bringing that crazy 3D illusion magic right to the stage, floating around you, making everything feel super high tech and futuristic. But here's the thing, we're kind of wrestling with how it stacks up against like classic set designs. There's a charm to stuff you can touch and feel, something really authentic about traditional setups that holography, with all its flashiness, might not totally capture. We're talking about finding that sweet spot, mixing old school craft with these eye-popping holograms to keep the story at heart without losing the soul of theater. Stepping into modernity without tripping over our own 2 feet. That's the goal. Stick around if you want to hear more about how tech is reshaping the face of live entertainment, but like keeping it real too.
Totally, Simon. It's like we're cooking up a gourmet meal here. Too much spice and you overpower the main dish, but just the right amount, it'll make the dish unforgettable. How do we cook this up just right without tipping the balance?
Exactly, Joe. It's all about that perfect seasoning. Guess we'll just have to keep tweaking the recipe until it's just right, finding ways to blend tech like holography with traditional elements so that it enhances rather than overshadows the art. What new flavors will this mix bring to audiences looking for both nostalgia and novelty in their theater experience? Keep tuning in, folks, and let's explore more of these game-changing trends together.
Absolutely, Simon. Speaking of perfectly blending tech with traditional theater elements, it got me thinking about some iconic moments where this mix really made headlines. Remember the Tupac hologram at Coachella? Man, that was a game changer in how audiences experience live performances. And it's not just concerts, even operas are getting in on the holographic action. Let's dive into how these standout events have influenced public perception and pushed the envelope in live entertainment. What's your take on these trailblazing performances?
Oh man, Joe, those shows are like nothing we've seen before. But I gotta play devil's advocate here for a sec. Sure, Tupac at Coachella was mind-blowing. It's like, hey, isn't he supposed to be, not around anymore? And yeah, it did pull in massive attention and probably got tons of people excited about holographic tech. But here's my beef with it. Are we just hyping up the novelty and kind of missing the larger picture? When you bring back artists like that, there's this thin line between impressive and, I don't know, kind of eerie. Does it really enhance how we experience music, or is it just tech showing off? And then with operas, while it's cool bringing these classic arts into the future, how does tossing in high-tech holograms change the storytelling? Are we still capturing the essence, or are operas turning into sci-fi flicks? Does the tech support the narrative, or just distract from what opera purists come for? The vocals, the acting, the raw emotional pull. What do you think, Joe? Are we cooking gourmet here, or just sprinkling glitter on a snack?
Simon, you've hit the nail. It's like we're walking a tightrope between tradition and spectacle. Plus, think about the legacies. Using legendary figures like Tupac, does it honor them or risk turning their memory into just another high-tech trick? Let's peel back this layer and really consider where the heart of live entertainment truly lies in this tech-driven age. What elements need to stay sacred, and what's ripe for innovation?
Joe, that's a heavy one, man. Like using icons like Tupac in hologram form, it's wild, kind of stepping into uncharted waters. On one hand, it's super cool. Seeing Tupac rock the stage again at Coachella probably sent chills down everyone's spine. But then, is it just tech magic doing its trick, or are we losing touch with, the authenticity? And about operas getting all teched up, it opens doors. Sure, it's innovative, draws in a crowd who might not typically book a night at the opera. But sticking to roots, the heart of storytelling, feels crucial too. These performances can be trailblazers, But where do we draw the line before it becomes just another gadget gimmick? So much to chew on, eh?
Totally, Simon. It reminds me of this time I caught a classic play reimagined with some high-tech visuals. They projected this holographic storm scene, right? Sounds cool, but man, the execution. It was like the storm took over the whole show. The actors were practically backdrops. So here's the value piece. While the crowd was definitely wowed at first, by the intermission it was clear the magic started to wear off. People started chatting not about the plot or performances, but about whether the tech was too much. It was a stunning visual, yeah, but it kind of drowned out everything else. That experience just hammered in how crucial balance is. It's not just about using tech, but integrating it seamlessly so it enhances rather than overshadows the essence of what people actually come for. We got to keep asking, are we enriching the experience or just packing it with more flash? What do you think, Simon? How do we find that sweet spot without tipping over?
Man, Joe, trying to balance high tech and tradition is like a raccoon trying to steal food from one of those fancy automatic pet feeders. He's intrigued by the gadget, but all he really wants is the grub inside. We got to make sure we're feeding the soul of the show, not just showing off our flashy new toys.
Yeah, Simon, that raccoon analogy, that's spot on. But let's peel this back. These tech marvels, are they really just shiny distractions? Think about ABBA's virtual comeback tour. It was a massive hit, right? Brought us nostalgia mixed with the latest in holography. People were buzzing about it, but here's the rub. Did fans leave talking more about the holograms than the songs themselves? And then there's the whole authenticity aspect. Like, do these performances create a new form of art, or are they kind of just capitalizing on our nostalgia and willingness to be wowed by techno wizardry? It's tricky, man. We're in this era where tech can literally bring the past to life, but is it truly meaningful, or is it like watering down the genuine connections that come from raw, live performances? How do we keep tech as a tool rather than let it become the showstopper, overshadowing the true stars, the content, and the human element? What's your take, man?
Joe, you're really onto something there. It's like, are we going to a concert or a tech expo? Sure, the ABBA tour was like a time machine. People got to see ABBA in their prime again. And man, wasn't that a kick? But if you leave the show and the only thing you can talk about is how lifelike the holograms were, then did we just pay for a high-quality YouTube video on stage? And hey, speaking of authenticity, it's kind of like enjoying soda. It's sweet and fizzy, but doesn't really quench your thirst like good old water does. Tech should be the fizz, not the whole drink. So yeah, making these unforgettable experiences without letting technology steal the spotlight, it's a tough cookie to crack. I guess the trick is using tech where it truly enhances the narrative or the nostalgia, not just because we can. Keeps things sparkling without drowning out the real flavors. What do you reckon, Joe? Find that balance, keep the fizz and still satisfy our thirst.
Yeah, Simon, you're really on point there with the whole tech as the fizz analogy. It's like we love the sparkle, but we don't want it to overpower the drink, right? This makes me think, are there instances where this balance has been struck just right? Like, can you think of performances where the technology truly amplified the experience without turning into the main spectacle? What are your thoughts there, man?
Oh, Joe, now that's a jackpot question. Think about Broadway shows using projections and LEDs to shift from cityscapes to dream sequences without missing a beat. When done right, man, it feels like you're flipping through the most thrilling book with seamless illustrations just enhancing the story, not hijacking it. What say you? Got any favorites where tech just nailed its supporting role?
Man, Simon, I've seen some classics where the tech was just right. But shifting gears a bit, have you ever witnessed those moments when tech glitches turn into comedy gold on stage? Like, suppose there's a holographic display and suddenly you have ghostly echoes or someone's head pops in unexpectedly. It's hilarious how performers have to improvise on the spot. There was this one time a speaker's hologram started echoing every word twice. Felt like we were in a trippy echo chamber. And man, the way they played along, tossing jokes about having an evil twin, definitely made it a memorable night. So it's not just about the mishaps, but how cleverly these unexpected moments are turned around, keeping the audience entertained and engaged even through the glitches. What's your best tech flub turned fab moment, Simon?